Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on how a digital business platform can provide a multi-channel customer experience. My name is Roberto Biondini. I am a solution consultant with Bizagi. I work at the UK headquarters here just outside of London, and I will be your host for today's session. Quick overview of what we're going to look at today. First of all, I will give you a very brief 5-minute introduction about who Bizagi is, the customers we have worked with over the past, and our partners, and so on and so forth. After that, we will spend most of today's session into an actual demonstration. So we've prepared a specific business scenario for you to precisely illustrate multi-channel engagement with customers and employees. And then, of course, as part of the demonstration, you will be free to submit questions, whatever the subject. We will make sure that those sections are followed up through email after the session has concluded. So before we actually look at the demonstration, a few words about Bizagi. We offer a digital business platform that has enabled digital process automation in over 500 customers worldwide. As you heard me mention earlier, we are headquarters in the UK, but we have very big operations in North America, the rest of Europe, of course, and Latin America. You may have heard about Bizagi before, thanks to our continued leadership in the BPM space, but you may have not seen our platform in detail, or you may not be up to date with the content and with the capabilities that we've added over the last couple of years. So what we do is that we help companies achieve digital transformation, real digital transformation objectives. And the way that we do that is by literally wrapping their legacy systems with a process-centric application layer that is agile. Agile means it can change quickly, can react quickly to changes within the enterprise or outside the enterprise. And in doing so, we deliver user experiences internally and externally that are engaging, and of course they are connected. That means we integrate with a variety of other systems. We will spend most of today on the end user part, of course, of the demonstration. So if you haven't seen which customers we have, a small selection of logos just to give you an overview of those. The first thing that you notice is that out of the 500 that we have a good spread around all verticals. So we do represent and we do help customers in many sectors. Also, the other thing to notice is that a lot of those customers are incumbent players. So they are large established companies, and they are the ones that feel the most the pressure, the need to change, the challenge posed by younger, born digital and agile competitors. And so that's something important to bear in mind. So for today's demonstration, what we're going to show you is a mortgage application context. We've created a business scenario in which a fictitious financial company called, as you could have guessed, Bizagi Financial Services, receives a mortgage application from a certain customer. In this case, the customer, Andrea, decided to buy a property in the UK, just outside of Bristol. So she's submitting an application from the web for the particular mortgage for a certain borrowing amount, and so on and so forth. So this is straight away a demonstration of one of the first channels that Bizagi enables. In this case, it's an inbound channel where the customer submits something from a web page. And the idea is that once that submission has gone through, we create, of course, something we call a case, a workflow instance in Bizagi, and that piece of work needs to be assigned to somebody in the enterprise. In our case, that's going to go to a team of mortgage underwriters, which we can select based on a number of criteria, based on the property type, based on the risk, based on the skills that's required, and so on and so forth. You can see that the customer receives a notification in terms of what application form has been created, a reference number of sorts, and that same reference number will be a common theme, will be something that we also provide, and of course something we also use in all the other channels that we use for the communication with the customer. Of course, we support traditional channels, as you would expect, like email notifications, and those channels also work as inbound channels. That means the customers, once notified about the mortgage application, they can reply to the email and they can send us back documents, for example, scanned copies of their the paperwork, bills, and so on and so forth, salary note, salary pay slips, and so on and so forth. What we're seeing on the screen, however, is I would say one of the most recent additions to Bizagi as of Bizagi 11 last year. We're showing you the notification that this fictitious bank sent to the customer themselves through social media, in this case Twitter. Twitter being just one of the examples of social media platforms that we support out of the box through the use of additional connectors that are available for free to Bizagi customers. Other platforms include Facebook, of course, Pinterest, and other slightly different tools like Slack on Zendesk that are oriented more to a IT audience, so to speak. Yet another channel that you can see on screen right now, and by the way, what we are showing right now to you is not a simulation of any kind. It's an actual phone that we are mirroring onto the broadcast. The idea is that right now what you see on the screen is an actual SMS that you can, of course, send to your customers, and that particular SMS will be, obviously will be customizable, etc. For this particular channel, we rely again on a connector, something that is available for process designers to download and use straight away. And the service itself, being able to send an SMS or being able to, say, you have a text-to-speech call or a pre-recorded phone call, is something provided by a third party called Plivo, with no particular affiliation, of course, with Bizagi. So where do we stand? We've created the mortgage application. The mortgage application is now live in Bizagi. It's a case, that's our terminology, and it's been assigned to one particular end user. We can see the work, what we call the work portal. That would be the browser-based front end that Bizagi end users inside or outside the enterprise can access. And by the way, this is just one of the options that we have to present the work portal. We do have a variety of options. Mobile comes to mind, so we can display this onto a tablet, we can display this onto a smartphone, and we do that by relying on the native mobile application that Bizagi provides for iOS devices and Android devices. But in this case, and by the way, we also have other options. We will see one at the end of the demonstration called Bizagi Sites, which is particularly new to our platform and also particularly powerful in many respects. So looking at this, the work portal, Bizagi is all about contextualization. That means that we want to provide end user with an experience, with a user experience that is engaging. That means giving them the right information, presenting them with things that obviously relate to them. So for mortgage underwriter, this particular person might own quote-unquote things. So we've introduced the concept of ownership between end users and data. In this case, we can see that this underwriter owns a number of mortgage brokers, for example. But we also provide customized shortcuts to specific actions or processes that need to be instantiated. And then, of course, we provide customized searches as well. Incidentally, if you're wondering, if you're not new to BPM and you have seen some of these patterns before, you might be familiar with the inbox, as in a more traditional way to present end users' workload. So we still have the inbox, of course, in Bizagi. We still have the way to represent a list of tasks with due dates for the individual task and for the process as a whole. But it goes without saying that as of Bizagi 11, we prefer to present, we prefer end users to land on what we call the me page and their contextualized experience. So if we open the same case that we've seen earlier, the case that was newly created as part of the demonstration, we find a form that was designed with Bizagi Studio, and we will see later a very brief overview, of course, of Bizagi Studio as we show you some of the process designers capability of the platform. The form has a lot of content. It has widgets. You can see the progress widget on the top. It's been very nicely laid out in terms of different tabs. I believe we also have, yes, we do, a tab dedicated to documents where we have automatically uploaded onto Bizagi the PDF for the application form for this particular bank, and we are showing, let me draw your attention to that, we are showing the document embedded into the Bizagi forms. We have different tabs for the applicant and so on and so forth. I guess the interesting bit from the point of view of, again, using different channels and connecting with different systems is what we have in the mortgage details, and specifically the portion where we show the information that we've gained from external third-party systems. For example, this is a real picture that we've in real time fetched from Google Street View. Of course, any process designer can subscribe to those services from Google. And then within the same form, we are using a ready-made widget, so an element that can be downloaded and used directly in any Bizagi project that shows not just Google Maps, in generic Google Maps, but the actual precise location of the element onto the screen. So very rich, very powerful user experience that isn't just contextualized, but is actually engaging in many respects. The other thing that we want to show you as part of the demonstration is that we are using, as part of this scenario, something called machine learning. Machine learning being a brand new feature that we've introduced in the latest release of Bizagi, that is Bizagi 11.1. So in this case, what we're doing, and let me explain to you later how that works, what we're doing is predicting whether this particular mortgage application should undergo a separate track, should undergo fraud investigation, which of course would make the context a lot more complex from an analysis perspective, from a business perspective. And we try to determine that, we do determine that in a predictive manner based on what? Based on the credit score that we have for the individual applicant or both applicants, if that is the case. And then of course, based on the risk that we have calculated internally in this Bizagi application through what we call a dynamic business rule, a policy. In other words, this works as a two-step process. First, Bizagi calls an external application, which could be provided by a third party, so that based on the name of the applicant, the address, and the postcode, we retrieve a credit score for the applicant himself. And then the second step would be that internally, based on the type of application, joint or joint application or single application, and based on the type of property, the borrowing amount, and the credit score, we determine the risk. So risk plus all the information about the applicant gives us what we feed into our machine learning algorithm. And you can see now a more developer-oriented view of machine learning. The idea is relatively simple. We do use a feature, another brand new feature in Bizagi called datasets, which is available exclusively to Bizagi Cloud customers. The idea of datasets is that we can save in the cloud, we can and share in the cloud data from Bizagi projects, which would be final and denormalized data. That means basically that it's self-contained into a table like the one you can see on the screen right now. We can use that data, we can expose it through a variety of methods to other applications. Crucially, another one of those applications is, believe it or not, Bizagi machine learning itself. So we can go back to the other screen where we can see how that data is used in Bizagi learning. The idea is that, in short, I don't want to give you a very lengthy description. I'm not myself a data scientist, but the idea is that we use that data to and we ask Bizagi to create a model based on the data. We train that model, and that model can be tested, and it gives us, in this case, an accuracy, which we can express as a percentage. And then when we have the percentage, we are happy with the result. 94% to me looks like an excellent accuracy, of course. Then we can sort of close the circle, and we can make a real business process created and automated with Bizagi use that prediction as part of a decision flow. So in practical terms, this is very simple. Bizagi automatically generates a connector. The connector can be downloaded onto the project, and we will see in a second, Bizagi Studio, we will see in a second the design and authoring environment, so to show you a bit of the behind the scenes of this demonstration. and then the same connector is used to inquiry the machine learning, the predictive capabilities of Bizagi and to give us a result. So if we go back to the work portal, what do we have in summary based on the data that we've gathered up to this point in the mortgage application, and what do we have from Bizagi machine learning, excuse me? We have an indication, in short. We could let the machine learning take the decision for us. That is a perfectly valid option, and it might make sense in specific business contexts. However, it doesn't necessarily make sense in this particular context. So what we're doing is we display an indication. It's a simple yes and no flag, of course. It could have been more complex, could have been a number of possible outcomes. It could have been something that is non-categorical, something that what we call a continuous parameter, where the prediction itself is a figure, it's a number, not a discrete value. In other words, our Gavin Sharp, our mortgage underwriter, has on the screen all the information, all the context about this Bizagi case, all the information about the mortgage application, the single or joint applicants, the property, a view on the property as well, a geographical location, credit scoring, and so on and so forth. And crucially, thanks to Bizagi machine learning, he also has an indication on whether this application should undergo a fraud investigation, which can be triggered at any point in the process through actions, of course, or whether this should continue as a normal application. And of course, we're just showing you some of the features available in this context. You can see that we have what we call a case folder. So the case folder is basically a common container which comprises of all the process instances, all the Bizagi cases that have been created since the very creation of the mortgage application. In the case folder, we have a timeline that shows us all the interactions. In this case, there's only one interaction because the mortgage application was submitted from the web, so we've talked about that particular channel. Then we can display things such as discussions, for example. So we have a ready-made feature available on the work portal where end users, in this case employees of Bizagi Financial Services, would exchange ideas, they would exchange comments, they could attach files, create topics, and so on and so forth. So all of that, again, is essential in our view to provide a very rich, a very engaging, and again, contextualized user experience. So before we move on to the next part of the demonstration, I wanted to give you a very quick 1 or 2 minute overview of the behind the scenes in a way. So how did we do this? You've already seen Bizagi machine learning and Bizagi datasets in action in our web browser. Those are brand new features of Bizagi 11.1 that are exclusively available to our Bizagi Cloud PaaS customers, but we also want to show you how we actually build this mortgage application and how we've implemented the integration of the solution with some of the channels that we have mentioned. So with Bizagi Studio, we can effectively create from start to finish one or more business applications, and the way that we do this is through a process-centric approach. So this is something I mentioned earlier with regards to our agility layer that we wrap around legacy applications. It's a process-centric business application, which is also data-driven. So many buzzwords, but all of them actually applicable, actually relevant to the solution. So if you look at this wizard, which is the default landing page, if you wish, the default landing point for somebody using this tool, a process designer or a business analyst or even a technical analyst. The idea is that the wizard provides guidance, it provides structure, it gives you an indication of the things that you need to do to create a business application. We have on the right a drop-down menu that allows us to select any of the processes in our solution, and they could be many of those, not just one or two. And then, of course, once we select the process, we use the carousel, which is the main component of the wizard, to select what portion we want to edit. So, a quick walkthrough of the wizard. The first step, which we strongly suggest, and some of this has to be enforced, some of this is obviously up to the user's decision, is to draw a process map to create a visual representation using BPMN compliant diagrams of what this portion of the application will look like. Second step is to model the data, and that means creating a common repository of business objects that represent in a business-friendly way all the information that is going to be handled by the application. The key point here is that yes, this data could be entirely defined in Bizagi and it could entirely live in Bizagi. However, crucially, we can import the definition of data from external data sources. We call this feature visualization, and that's extremely critical in any enterprise to be able to reuse what you have, irrespective of the source, without having to redefine things, to implement things, without having to migrate things, which is also a valid option, but definitely not the preferred one. So virtualization is crucial. Then we can create the user interface with the forms designer, which is integrated in the solution. The idea is that the forms designer provides mobile-ready forms, and those mobile-ready forms can be displayed on an iOS device, tablet or smartphone, or an Android device without any coding. The other paramount aspect, of course, of Bizagi Studio is reusability of data entities, reusability of forms, of business rules, and so on and so forth. Once we've defined the forms, then we can define the logic of the process. That would be the business rules in a variety of methods using simple visual editors, of course, drag and drop in fields from the data model, or more advanced views, which Bizagi provides behind the scenes. We then go on to define what we call performance, in other words, work allocation criteria. And in other words, we tell the system how to assign work and tasks across different end users of the same enterprise. And then, of course, the all-important aspect of integration, which I've already mentioned with regards to being able to send an SMS or to send an update via Twitter, send a Facebook status update, or integrating with any other platforms not necessarily related to social media. So supporting and implementing some of those channels, which obviously are the main topic of today's demonstration. And incidentally, if you were to wonder what happens if the customer simply calls my fictitious financial services company, what happens if they just walk into the branch? Well, that's even easier. All we have to do for our mortgage advisor, so not another end user, would be just to create a new case from the Bizagi drop-down menu and manually enter those details. Or maybe if it comes from an email, we could, and we have, by the way, for this demonstration, even though we're not showing it to you, we do integrate with inbound emails where we fetch data from the email, we fetch documents, and we attach those documents. We insert that data into a Bizagi case directly from an email, yet another channel as part of the demonstration. So we talked about Twitter. I think we could look at how we establish the connection between Twitter and this Bizagi project before we move on to talk about another critical feature in Bizagi 11.1. As I mentioned earlier, the connection, so forgive me for using the same word again, but the integration between Bizagi and the external application, which happens to be a social media cloud-based application in this case, is done in this case through an additional connector. When I say additional, it means it has to be downloaded for free from our connectors exchange. In this case, the Twitter connector has been downloaded onto the project, and we call it as part of a certain action. The connector will allow us to do different things, okay, in some cases multiple options. We select multiple actions, rather, and then once we select the action, we can visually establish a mapping, if you are technically inclined, a visual mapping between the Bizagi data model on the left and the input parameter, in this case, simply the tweet, the actual content, the textual content of the tweet on the right, and conversely, we can establish a similar visual mapping between the result or the return parameter from the connector and the data model in Bizagi. So that is a very short overview, of course. This isn't meant to be in any way comprehensive, but it's meant to give you an overview of some of the salient features in either in Bizagi or specifically in Bizagi 11 and Bizagi 11.1. So one last feature that we want to cover, something that is entirely new to Bizagi 11.1 and again exclusive to our cloud customers, is called Bizagi Sites. And the idea of Bizagi Sites is that it provides the ability to build heavily customized user experiences. In other words, it provides the ability to build effectively the personal sites or portals, whichever way we want to call them, where end users, in this case employees of this financial institution, can access data, they can access functionality, they can access the same context that they would have in the work portal. And all of that is wrapped up in a front end that looks like effectively a modern consumer-style website, something that we obviously are proud to present as a visually rich user experience. Excuse me. So these microsites effectively are, you could call them tailored for purpose or tailored for role. The idea is that they depend on the different types of stakeholders. So in my example, a mortgage underwriter will see a slightly different site. For example, a mortgage advisor will see a slightly different site, and so on and so forth. These sites, these portals, are being added within the Bizagi Sites editor, which is what you see is what you get, and crucially, is a no-code experience. It means no coding, no scripting is required at any point for a web designer effectively to design the site and to make it available to end users. End users being, of course, employees of this company. We're talking about something that would be within the enterprise. So the idea is that by using something like Bizagi Sites, which is crucial, something that we've been working on for a while now, we can provide a user experience that is engaging, again, something that I've mentioned before, and it's very immersive, very rich, and that's essential, we believe, in today's enterprise world to scale adoption. That means that often when we find in our implementation something that might, of course, hinder adoption, that might hinder the presence of our solution in an enterprise, it's not the implementation, but what happens next, i.e. whether end users are reticent or reluctant, I should say, to adopt the new tool, to adopt the new UI, of course. And that would go a great length, of course, it would go a great way into avoiding precisely that particular solution. So that concludes our presentation for today. And I've been keeping an eye on the questions that we have received during the demonstration. So very great questions. Thanks for that. As I mentioned earlier, we'll make sure that we follow up on each and every of those questions. I certainly thank you for your time, and I hope that you found the session to be of value. If you would like to follow up, we provide a wealth of usable information on our website. So your starting point is bizagi.com. We have, among the other things, it goes without saying, we provide the ability to download and install Bizagi for evaluation purposes, either Bizagi Studio, which I have briefly demonstrated today, or Bizagi Modeler, if you are simply looking to use a tool that can be used for modeling and documenting business processes with no immediate need for automation. And for those of you who want more insights on best practices, for example, they want to understand more of the solution, we have plenty of resources. We have white papers, what we call thought leadership. We have webinars that you can watch. We have case studies about the different customers that we have helped over the years, and of course, not forgetting access to the complete documentation for Bizagi Modeler, Bizagi Studio, and Bizagi Engine. So many thanks for joining us again, and have a good day.